and welcome to the first in our LinkedIn Live series called Social Elements Live. Today I'll be talking to you about innovative trends in social media marketing with my colleagues Joe Edge and Karen Bright. And first of all, I want to introduce you to Social Elements. And today's agenda, we'll be talking a little bit about an introduction to social elements, and then we'll move on to LinkedIn and AI, what's new for 2025. We'll be discussing some trends for social media across the year. Then we'll move to a panel discussion, and at the end, there'll be an opportunity for Q&A. So just to introduce you to Social Elements, Social Elements helps life science and healthcare businesses to be heard online, blending an insider's knowledge of the sector with a strategic analytical approach to social media. We use our experience and knowledge in the life sciences field, and we fuse this with our skills, expertise, and up-to-date resources within social media marketing, both organic and paid. We're results driven, and we focus on working with you and your team to maximize your marketing budget whilst delivering an authentic and strategic campaign. We're scientifically minded, but we're not just for science-based businesses. We're knowledgeable with a career background in pharma and expert knowledge of the scientific sector, so we know what we're talking about. And we're also proficient in both paid for and organic social media services. We're also curiosity provoking. We like to look for ways to do things that challenge and exceed expectations. And we're always looking for new ways to do things. And finally, we're also strategic. We're observant, data driven, and results orientated, but we're definitely not boring. So a little bit more about who I am and who Social Elements is. The agency was founded in 2017. And as I mentioned, we are a social media agency, and we specialise in providing bespoke, strategic social media and also content marketing expertise for your business. We're proud to say that we support all types of business, but we do have a special interest in startup biotechs and not-for-profit organisations. So a little bit about me and the rest of my colleagues. You'll be able to find us on LinkedIn by scanning the QR codes with your phone. So my name's Lisa Kyriakou-Fawkes. I'm a social media consultant with 8 years of experience in social media marketing and paid for social advertising across LinkedIn, Meta and X. I also have particular expertise in LinkedIn marketing and training. I have a master's in medical microbiology from the University of Surrey, and I love all things scientific. I also have 20 years of postgrad experience in research and drug development. Joe Edge is also with me today, and she specialises in organic digital marketing with a focus on strategy, social media content and training. LinkedIn's her main platform, and she has a wealth of experience covering other social media platforms as well. She's worked with a variety of businesses, including life science, tech, education, charity, SaaS and recruitment. And Karen Bright is an award-winning copywriter and social media specialist with over 20 years experience in marketing and comms. She's won several national and regional awards, and she specialises in copywriting, blogs, feature writing, web content, social media marketing and email marketing. And finally, Taisha, who couldn't be with us today because she's unwell. Taisha has a bachelor's degree in journalism and 5 years of digital marketing experience. She's also the comms and marketing lead at Social Elements, and she specialises in digital marketing strategy, social media management and platform optimization. So some of the key services that Social Elements offers are strategy, ongoing service, and training and consultancy. We believe that without a strategy to underpin your marketing activities, you're wasting your time and money, and you're unlikely to get the results you need. So we always start with a strategy, and it helps to develop the right logical and data-driven approach for your social media marketing. We then move on to more retained services where we offer organic and paid social media management. And we also offer content marketing services such as blog writing, case studies, and newsletters. And then finally, we offer businesses the opportunity to have training sessions with us. That might be within the area of LinkedIn or employee advocacy or any other sort of social media type of training that you require. And then we also offer businesses consultancy service where we'll provide an amount of our time to go in and help that business with their marketing activities. So I'll hand over to Karen next. She's going to be talking to you about AI and marketing during 2025. Thank you.
So hi, it's great to be here today to talk to you about AI and marketing. Next slide, please. So I think it's fair to say that artificial intelligence is absolutely transforming the way that brands engage with audiences and the way that we as marketers work. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that AI is likely to have a similar impact to the internet. I remember when the internet came along 30 years ago and it was dismissed as a flash in the pan. There was lots of skepticism about it. And I think AI is likely to be similarly important, and it really is here to stay. And the reason for this is because it's just so versatile. It has such potential to save time and to help with repetitive tasks, but also to help with broader tasks such as content ideas and personalizing customer experiences. And it's really helping marketers to achieve more with less. Next slide, please. I think this chart really does highlight the impact that AI is having on the marketing industry as a whole. So you'll see the stats for 2023 and 24, the percentage of marketers using AI in their work. I think these stats are quite staggering. You can see that during that 12-month period, there was an 86% growth in marketers using AI to generate images. And the one that shocks me most of all, a 95% growth in the use of AI to completely revise and rewrite text. That is quite shocking, really, although not completely surprising. I was on an AI and marketing course last year, and there were about 25 of us on the course, and every single person in the room was using AI to some extent in their work. Next slide, please. So, certainly true that generative AI is off probation and officially on the team now. And I think what we're seeing now is very much a transition from where we were in late 22 when AI first really exploded onto the scene, where we were in an experimental stage where the tools were coming along. There was a great excitement about them. People were testing them for the first time, and there was a great deal of change. And I think now what's happening is we're moving into a period where these tools are really becoming quite embedded in a lot of business operations. And obviously there are a whole range of possibilities, as I mentioned earlier. Probably the most controversial is the use of AI to enhance content creation. And no doubt you'll be aware there are lots of tools to use AI to help with content ideas, content planning, content creation, tools like ChatGPT, that's probably the most famous, but also Claude and Jasper. And I think really there are two schools here. There's the school of thought for people who see AI as a way to produce content and to really streamline their content production. But then there's another school of thought from marketers who are skeptical about this because the quality of the content produced by AI is so poor. It can be very generic, very samey, very soulless. And of course, there's the concern that it can really destroy creativity with people becoming too reliant on it. Excuse me. So there is a lot of skepticism, and I think growing skepticism around the use of AI. for content creation. And then there's also the use of AI for community management. So using AI to help with managing online communities, chatbots, AI customer assistants, that kind of thing, and automating those specific tasks. Next slide, please. I think one of the most interesting areas is the way AI can be used to enhance decision making. One of AI's great strengths is its ability to process large volumes of data quickly and accurately. That's something that we as humans could not do as speedily as AI. So clearly there's a role for AI to play in number crunching, analysing data, and doing that at some speed. And I think that's a very interesting area that we're going to see more of in 2025. And then, of course, AI used for sort of tasks like keyword research, hashtag research, and all those sort of tasks, finding influencers. I know people who use AI tools to do those sort of tasks, and it can really speed things up a great deal. Another area, ad targeting. So we're now seeing the development of lots of tools on various platforms to help improve ads. So everything from audience targeting through to campaign budget optimization on Facebook. And I think these tools can really come into their own, particularly if you're not familiar with those particular platforms. So if you're not familiar with Facebook paid advertising, I think AI can be a really good way to help you, to help maximize your return on investment from your paid advertising. And we're only going to see more of that in the future. So particular trends that are upcoming over the next few months, certainly going to see a lot more generative AI for content creation. That could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on your perspective. Personally, I think AI tools are really good for coming up with content ideas and really to overcome that kind of blank page syndrome where you want to start thinking about writing a social post, but you're not sure which angle to take. So you might use AI to help you produce an outline for that post, but not actually to use AI to produce all your content. I wouldn't ever recommend that as a copywriter and a social media specialist. So I think we're certainly going to see AI used more for a whole load of different content purposes. But again, as I mentioned earlier, also there's going to be increasing amounts of pushback around this due to the sort of poor quality of a lot of the content AI produces. Next up, I think we're going to see growth in AI-powered analytics tools. Again, this is a really interesting area of development. These tools are only going to get more sophisticated to help with campaign planning, strategic planning, and decision-making. And we'll also see greater focus on hyper-personalization. Again, going back to the point I mentioned earlier about the criticisms around AI content being very generic. The AI platforms and tools, the people who are behind these are very aware of the criticisms that are being leveled at them. And I think we will see increasingly sophisticated tools to sort of tackle these problems and try and create more personalized content using sort of likes of ChatGPT and Claude. One trend that's particularly interesting for me is AI tools to enhance video and visual content production. Again, I think we'll see more of that over the coming months. I find video content production really time consuming. So any tools that can help with that process, I'll be following with great interest. And then finally, I think we're going to see more transparency around AI generated content. Again, I think the AI platforms are very aware of the criticisms that are being leveled at AI content, and they want to increase transparency. They want to be clearer about what is AI generated content and what isn't. So I think we'll see more of that over the coming months. Next slide, please. And this is just a visual to show you how AI generated content is being labeled on Facebook and Instagram. So what if you're not using AI tools in your work at the moment? Not everybody is, and it can feel a bit overwhelming, I think. There's so much change going on in the AI world. So where do you start? Where do you pick up? What do you use AI for? So my recommendation would be to start small, to not try to do too much at once. Test a few things. As this stat here says, 63% of social teams agree that manual tasks still prevent them from doing high impact work. So where you can deliver the most value to start with is to look at those tasks that are repetitive, that are holding you back, freeing up more time to do more strategic stuff. So you might want to use AI to help you with creating customer personas, or as I mentioned earlier, finding influencers, or crunching some data, or presenting you with a chart of information. I think AI can be really helpful with those sorts of tasks. Next slide, please. So yes, start small. Use AI in a sensible way to automate those repetitive tasks, but also to gain deeper insights into your audience behavior and preferences. And do experiment with generative AI tools for content ideas and research. I wouldn't use AI to generate my content, but I do use it to do some brainstorming when I'm coming up with a social post or a blog, and it just helps get things started and helps with a bit of brainstorming. And then, of course, regularly review and refine your AI systems. Things are moving at such a rapid pace. You really need to sort of be keeping up to date with the changes. So read up online on what's happening, industry updates, that kind of thing. Next slide, please. So there's one takeaway from today. It's don't lose the human touch with AI. I think it's very easy to get sucked into that sort of using AI and letting it take over, but don't go down that path. Use tools like ChatGPT and Claude to help with research, outlining and feedback, but don't use it to write your content. It's a robot at the end of the day. And consumers are very aware of AI generated content. As this stat says here, 50% can spot AI generated content and 52% engage less when they suspect it's AI written. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Richard van der Blom, one of the world's leading LinkedIn experts. He's done quite a bit of research around this, around the decline over the last 12 months in reach and engagement on LinkedIn, and he attributes a lot of this to the rise of AI generated content on LinkedIn. And so I recommend reading some of his research around that. It's very interesting stuff. So yeah, see AI as a tool, not a replacement for you. Finally, I'd recommend reading this article by Josh Bernoff, and he's a prolific writer. He's done obviously a lot of his own writing, but he's also edited a lot of AI content as well. And this very interesting article, which looks at the sort of telltale signs of AI generated content. So he talks about how AI tools write with an accent, and I'd recommend reading it. It's really interesting stuff. And now I'd like to hand over to Jo Edge, who's going to talk to you a little bit about social media predictions for 2025.
Thanks, Karen. Right, so we're going to start having a look at what's on the rise across social media platforms, looking at the main platforms and what to expect really for 2025. I think if you're a social media user at all and you're using it for your business, you can't have failed to see that short-form video is really sort of dominating the platforms at the moment. And it's really been on the rise over the last couple of years. So sort of going back to the popularity of like how TikTok and Instagram Reels sort of really kind of kicked off over the last couple of years, that sort of snackable kind of video content has really grown at such a fast pace. TikTok has really been sort of leading the way, and Instagram quickly sort of cottoned onto that and sort of started Reels a few years ago, which is quite established now, but other platforms are looking to follow. So YouTube, for instance, with YouTube Shorts, has been sort of gaining momentum over the last years, and even LinkedIn now over the last year, certainly in 2024 with the introduction of the mobile video feature, there's been a big increase with 34% year on year viewings with video content on the platform, and that's looking set to grow over 2025. So something to really sort of watch and look at how you can factor that into your social media strategy for the upcoming year and beyond, because video is just something that is going to get really sort of, I think, bigger and bigger. TikTok is a platform that's really kind of quite sort of different style to LinkedIn. So it's very sort of like trend driven and more playful, and there's a much younger demographic there, and sort of videos are up to 60 seconds are working particularly well there. Instagram quite similarly, but more sort of brand orientated. There's a much broader audience there, and videos up to 90 seconds tend to work really well. And they're not too far behind the YouTube Shorts in sort of popularity, sort of looking at engagement by sort of followers over the last year. They're the sort of top 3 platforms right now. Much more sort of like demo based, informative, sort of educational, and some sort of entertaining type videos. And that's got a much broader sort of varied global reach. And that's, again, sort of videos up to about 60 seconds. But LinkedIn is certainly putting a lot more emphasis on video at the moment. So it's something that I would really be sort of focusing on testing out the water, if you haven't done already, for this year, to see how that can work potentially for your business, and how you can help to get your target audience more engaged with your content that you're sharing. Next slide, please. Just want to show you like a couple of examples really of how sort of life sciences businesses are sort of using short-term video across some of the platforms. And these examples are on TikTok, because I think a lot of businesses, and particularly sort of, you know, in that industry, sort of in life science, you may think that it's not an audience that's going to be sort of relevant to you, but these are some different ways that some of those businesses are life science sort of organizations are using TikTok and videos to engage different types of audiences. So using things like sort of behind the scenes type videos, looking at how and share sort of information about sort of jobs and career opportunities, and also sort of giving sort of glimpses sort of behind the scenes of how product development and maybe drug discovery and development, sort of some of the processes that go on behind the scenes, to try and sort of engage with perhaps some of the sort of younger sort of demographics, to sort of capture sort of interest with them, and show those sort of like how sort of more personalized content really to reach different types of people. But it's still quite a relatively new area for life sciences. So it's a really good opportunity, because it's not sort of being sort of massively used in that industry right now. So it's a really good opportunity that if you're not using TikTok and sort of short-term video on right now for your business, it's an area that you could be really sort of capitalizing on that, because it's not saturated like it is in other industries, and it's a really good way to help sort of boost your visibility. Next slide, please. Storytelling. This is something that's been a really sort of big thing over the last couple of years, and certainly over 2024, I think was becoming more and more prominent. Storytelling is obviously a proven driver of emotional connections, and it's become a really sort of big key focus for businesses across social media, particularly over the last year, and this is just going to set to get bigger and bigger. Going back to sort of what Karen was talking about, AI, I think that's part of the sort of backlash to kind of AI, where sort of that authenticity part is becoming sort of more and more important. So audiences are sort of turning away from that kind of really sort of slick, polished, well choreographed content, and they want to see much more kind of honesty, and sort of see the sort of real life problems and solutions that are going on for businesses in a much more relatable way. That sort of human factor, and being able to show sort of what makes you and your business different, and really sets you apart about your sort of values and your visions, and it can really sort of help you to send out. So how you can sort of share sort of more relatable, honest, and genuine sort of content, showing the sort of people who make up your business, is becoming more and more important, and something to really sort of factor in to your strategy for 2025. Next slide, please. So I wanted to just show you some examples, because I think a lot of particularly sort of life science businesses will think perhaps, you know, they don't feel that maybe they have the kind of content, stories, opportunities, ideas to share with their audience to sort of really capture that storytelling. But there's lots of different ways of doing that. So I wanted to just sort of highlight a few posts that have gone out on LinkedIn with a few companies in the life science sector. So first of all, sort of looking at social elements, there's this is the company page, and there's been a post here sort of sharing about a networking opportunity and talking about sort of collaboration, which can really sort of help sort of build, you know, connections, and show kind of what you're doing behind the scenes beyond social elements and the sort of broader network. And then the example with Pfizer, is looking at a new sort of digital platform that they're using it as a resource for people with migraines. And it's giving some sort of real life examples of some of the people that it's helped as well. So that kind of social sort of proof as well. SciTech is another one here where it's looking at the employees, so who make up SciTech, and showing some social events and sort of team building that goes on behind the scenes. So giving you a bit of a glimpse to the sort of personality and the sort of company culture that's beyond the sort of perhaps more corporate face that you see of that company. And then GSK. This one is an employee, so who works for GSK, sort of showing sort of like more personal perspective and stories, so linking it back to the work that he does with sort of precision medicines and development at GSK, and then a personal story about a family member here. So there's lots of different ways of being able to sort of tie some of the things that go on within your company back into your content to show more about your company, a bit more depth about the people and that sort of human element and the storytelling involved. So really sort of moving away from that sort of corporate content that perhaps has been sort of more typical in the past. Next slide, please. So AI, I know that Karen has obviously spoken about this in quite a lot of depth already, so I'm only going to touch on this quite briefly, but just to sort of touch on that, something that Karen has already kind of spoken about was that, you know, most of the, well, all the major platforms have started adopting elements of AI to some degree. So you'll start to notice more this sort of filtering more and more in. So like Meta, looking at that sort of automated ad generation, image editing and creative captions. TikTok looking at sort of AI filters, a bit more like the aesthetic side of things, with, you know, virtual assistants helping you coming up with video ideas, looking at the sort of trends and suggestions for best practice. LinkedIn also is having has had it introduced lots of different AI features, so looking at assisted sort of messaging, looking at recruitment tools and more personal feeds and job marketing, sort of ads as well. So you'll start noticing that more. I certainly noticed that I'm seeing a lot more of that popping up on my feed at the moment, with lots of sort of jobs matching, not always getting it right. So I guess, again, it's like, you know, lots of the platform things are in sort of early stages that you should see that refining things, and I'm sure they will sort of improve quite fast. And then X, looking at sort of personal recommendations sort of for your users' timelines, ad targeting again, and things like language translation. So there's lots sort of going on behind the scenes, and I would just expect to see this sort of taking off sort of like more and more over the next year also, and sort of getting better and better. So lots of it are in fairly sort of like basic stages. I know, for instance, LinkedIn, I wouldn't recommend necessarily using AI there to help sort of create your content. It's still quite sort of basic, but it can certainly help to give you some ideas, and is worth testing out. But I would expect to see that really sort of improving as we go forward, and as more people uptake that as well. So the good thing is that actually AI is now being sort of labelled by these platforms as well, and there are sort of indicators to sort of show that there is you know, more transparency across the platforms as well. So you should be able to sort of see where those sort of features are being used as well, so that it's kind of like more obvious to people. But things are just moving really fast, so I would expect sort of over, you know, 2025 to start seeing lots of new little features appearing, and all the platforms sort of looking at what's working for each other as well, and sort of mimicking some of those as well, which you know, will be interesting to see how that develops over the next year or so. Next slide, please. So social media is the new search engine, which is, you know, really, I think, transforming the way that people are searching for information now, compared to how perhaps we were like a few years ago. I think for younger audiences, so sort of the millennials and Gen Z, this is going to be just the way that they've always been searching for things, because they're so used to being on like on TikTok and YouTube, and using them as search tools, and that's just been a sort of natural kind of adaptation as social media has taken up such a big sort of chunk of most people's daily lives. But for some of us that are used to I think back to a very long time ago, Ask Jeeves, and then obviously sort of more recently Google has been sort of dominating, I think, most platforms sort of searches. I think people are starting to sort of move away from that quite a lot and using social platforms as their search engines. And looking at some data from Sprout Social over last year, 24% of users who are looking for searches are using social platforms rather than Google searches now. So that's quite a big shift. So for businesses, that really means that there's an opportunity here for you to think about how you optimize for visibility. And it's becoming sort of more important than ever before. So thinking about things like, your keywords and looking at where you can make sure those keywords are placed and things like your bios, your, content captions, video scripts, and any kind of like text on any of the platforms that you're using. All of that is searchable. It's really important that those keywords are the right keywords. So, putting some time into researching sort of what they are and thinking about how your audience would be searching is really important. Location, again, really important to make sure that that's added to your social platforms, because for searches and search purposes, again, that's a really important signifier to people who are sort of looking for businesses like yours, and thinking really carefully as well about your target audience as users and what their intent is, because that should be really feeding into your content strategy and helping you to make sure that you're creating much more like aligned visual first content, but that it's optimized for searches. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is a really sort of, good, I suppose, quote to sort of keep in mind that social SEO is not just for Google. Ranking your content on platforms is really key to being discovered in 2025. And that's something I think to really sort of bear in mind, that those little sort of kind of adjustments and edits that you can make to really sort of optimize as much as you can for those sort of keywords and SEO to make you more discoverable is really important, because it's becoming harder and harder to get found. So, that optimization is really, really key if you want to appear in the right searches. Next slide, please. So I'm going to have a quick look at sort of what is losing momentum on social media at the moment. Next slide, please. So one thing we're sort of talking about earlier was authenticity and storytelling and sort of that relatable content. So what's losing really sort of momentum at the moment is that sort of corporate, overly polished content is really sort of turning audiences off, and it's not what they want to see. So businesses are having to be a lot more creative and innovative about how they produce content. People want to see much more genuine, sort of real insights and real stories. And that really helps to drive connections with the right people. So sort of being relatable is the key. So, that human factor is really important. So, bearing in mind about sort of your unique voice, so what makes your business and you. So, share what makes, sets you apart from your competitors, about your, your unique style, your vision, your values, and your quirks too. I think more openness about the challenges you face as a business. So, people want to see the struggles as well as all the wins. So, how, what have you failed in and what did you learn? Those kind of stories really help to build authenticity with your audience, and sharing sort of unfiltered wins too. So all the kind of messy sort of process that went on behind the scenes to help you kind of, reach and sort of get your goals and get to where you want. So we don't want to just see the highlights, because that's sort of glossing over sort of what goes on behind the scenes. We want to kind of see more of, how you got there in that journey and the sort of bumps along the way. So being a bit more honest about that really sort of helps people to sort of buy into you as a business and see you as much more relatable, honest and trustworthy. So expect to see sort of this year, sort of real stories are going to be driving much deeper connections, and that people's like content strategies will be slightly different, I think, sort of going forward, and you'll start to see a lot more of these types of stories, and really sort of real, genuine, content about the people and the ups and downs of business on your content feeds across the various platforms. Next slide, please. Thank you. Really, because as I suppose platforms are growing, businesses or are looking, sort of platform owners looking at sort of other ways to other sort of revenue streams that they can bring in as well, and how to again sort of combat that kind of authenticity with sort of the users and members that they have on their platform. So giving them kind of verification and some kind of like authentication to sort of be that, you know, these are genuine businesses here, real people, sort of you know, to sort of identify or dispel sort of bots and sort of fake accounts, all of those things as well. So there's been some paid tools sort of introduced over the last couple of years. So features that are really sort of, I suppose, with the aim of sort of enhancing the user experience and giving you a more of a sort of VIP and premium experience as a paid user on the platform. So Meta and X have got verified and premium, and it's been sort of touted as a way, I suppose, so that you have a more, I suppose, authentic account and to give added sort of reassurance to businesses and the people who are following you as well. And there's lots of different features across those platforms that are giving you sort of more reach, more opportunities for discoverability. X in particular has really sort of taken away the sort of analytics for sort of just general kind of non-paid users now. So by being a premium member, you get much more kind of detailed analytics and much more scope to be sort of featuring more prominently in people's feed. So that sort of visibility factor is really sort of important as well. And again, LinkedIn is now sort of within the last year, they've followed suit and they have brought in premium for company pages to sort of increase visibility and give companies a little bit more scope to showcase their business across the platform as well. So there's lots of things sort of happening at the moment. Again, it's still in quite sort of early stages. Lots of business still are yet to adopt this, and some are quite, I suppose, skeptical whether they need to take it up or not. But I think for those, you know, lots of corporate businesses in particular want that verification so that people know it is the sort of genuine account. And there are some sort of, you know, quite nice little features sort of coming in there that can be quite useful for businesses too. So again, it's one to really sort of watch and see how that develops, because I think at the moment there's probably not enough for many businesses to sort of make it the sort of like go-to kind of like option. But as these sort of paid tools, I think, and certainly with discoverability and reach, if this continues to sort of improve and grow, then it's probably something that many businesses will be sort of considering more in the future. Next page, slides, please. Thank you. So LinkedIn has really sort of putting a lot more emphasis on company pages. So they've kind of there's been a lot more, I guess, focus on LinkedIn sort of profiles for quite a long time, and actually having much more sort of scope for visibility. So LinkedIn company pages have got a little bit of, or had a little bit of a glow up over the last 12 months. And it's something that will be really relevant to lots of life science businesses, and certainly worth looking into about how this could perhaps work for your business across the platform. Some of the advantages and nice features that have been brought into the sort of paid version are things like a custom call to action button, which will drive people to take the action that you actually want them to take, looking at who's visited your page, this ability to be able to invite members to follow your page, which you're not able to do on the free version. There's also, again, sort of options for AI and sort of help drafting posts. And then some other quite nice features like being able to have a custom testimonial feature. So it's just something that will help you sort of stand out a little bit more from the other like non-paid pages, and sort of being able to highlight your business's strengths, showcasing things like certificates and awards. I think the thing at the moment and dilemma that most businesses will have for sort of the big corporates, it's probably not a very big fee, but perhaps smaller businesses, you know, you need to think about sort of that extra expense and sort of monthly fee. Is it really worth it? I think it's still really kind of early days, and I think a lot of businesses are already sort of doing what you can do and what you need to do for, like, via the free version. So again, I think it's sort of going back to those paid tools, thinking about if features sort of really improve over the next sort of 12 months, this might start to sort of change people's opinions, and we might start to see, I think, a bit more uptake with businesses taking on, or certainly testing out, the sort of company page premium version on LinkedIn. Next slide, please. Hashtags. So hashtags, I think, is just a conversation that never ever seems to go away. There's always something, some conversation going on about, you know, hashtags and sort of whether they're disappearing, how many you should use. You know, the conversation sort of goes on, and there have been some quite big changes over the last couple of years, and I think the sort of partly the main reason that, again, is sort of going back to the sort of search features and tweaks that have been made on platforms and how people are sort of searching for content, that actually hashtags are not becoming as sort of vital as perhaps they were like last year or, you know, the year before, because of keywords and search functions and how people are sort of finding sort of content and businesses now. So as an example, sort of here, you know, sort of looking at sort of LinkedIn and some figures over the last few years. So in 2023, if you were using 3 hashtags on LinkedIn, then you were getting 100% boost in your reach for your content on LinkedIn. But a year later, that sort of maximum reach boost really sort of dropped to 9%. And that's because LinkedIn, well, they did do quite a lot of, I think, sort of playing around with hashtags. There were lots of rumors going around at the time whether you know, hashtags were going away or not going away, but it was really sort of on behind the scenes, sort of focusing much more on keywords. And although I think LinkedIn is still saying it's still advisable to use hashtags, and yeah, 3 to 5 I think has always been the sort of recommended amount. I think if you've got the right keywords in your content, then it's going to get found. However, it is still worth, I think, using hashtags for a couple of reasons. So particularly if you're running like an event, or it's like an awareness day or something like that, and you have specific hashtags that you want to search on or draw attention to, that can be sort of really important. But keywords are really sort of like taking over and becoming far more crucial. So in theory, if you're using the right keywords, you don't really need to use hashtags. But it's, I think, for, you know, peace of mind, there's absolutely no harm in continuing to use them. If you've got branded ones, again, it's really worth having them, because if people are searching on that hashtag, they're going to find your content more easily. But it's certainly something to, I think, keep an eye on over 2025. And I think hashtags are not going to be as key as they were going forward. And it's all about the keywords.
Thanks, Jo and Karen. That was really interesting. So now we're going to move over to the panel discussion part of the presentation. And the first topic that I thought we could talk about today, and I certainly get asked a lot about this, and that is X dead? So who wants to kick off with this discussion?
I think one of the problems for me is that the brand is so tarnished now, and there's been a sort of mass exodus, obviously, since Elon Musk took over as the owner of X. I think it would be difficult for that to change now. I think there's been too much reputational damage, and I think even if Elon Musk sold X, I don't think we'd see a big return there. I think it's got too associated with negativity, and obviously we're seeing the rise of other platforms that are trying to fill that void. So a lot of people are spending more time on LinkedIn as a result of that, and certainly benefited LinkedIn, the slow decline of X, but also obviously Threads, and more recently seeing quite a lot of growth on Blue Sky. I think Blue Sky is probably the nearest equivalent to Twitter, and I think we will see some real growth there over the next few weeks and months.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly been advising. So for clients that are already on X and they have a good following, I've been advising that they continue with that, as long as their kind of company morals and ethics are aligned with that. But then to work on, take their emphasis to another platform like LinkedIn or Blue Sky, and try and build up a following there, with a view to coming off of X sort of this year sometime. Yeah, that's the approach I've been taking. What do you think, Jen?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I think especially sort of in life science kind of industry as well, I think it's always been a really sort of big and sort of dominant platform for professionals on there and businesses, and lots of businesses will have a really sort of big following, and there's lots of really good information and interesting information on there too. However, that's now sort of mixed in with, as Karen said, some of that kind of negativity and sort of quite toxic sort of content, I guess, across the platform. And I think some businesses, I think, sort of going back to their sort of values and ethics, don't feel very comfortable on the platform right now. So having, you know, as you said, that sort of like measured, I think, approach, thinking about whether it is the right platform going forward or not, and having sort of secondary platforms that you're trying to build up is certainly sort of really good advice. And I think it's, again, it's something to watch, but I think there's been, you know, obviously a lot in the media about it as well, and I think a lot of businesses just don't really want to be associated with being on that platform right now. So it's always, you know, a big kind of reminder, and I think warning for all businesses: just don't put all your eggs in one basket, because you never know really what's going to happen, and you've got to have that sort of backup plan, so if you need to kind of move elsewhere, you can.
Yeah, exactly. I think the all eggs in one basket approach is not a good one to have currently, is it? So it sounds like Twitter isn't dead yet, or X isn't dead yet, but it's certainly looking like it's terminal. Okay, so the next topic for discussion is some tips for staying ahead of platform changes. So the platforms, especially LinkedIn, over the last year have just been constantly changing, and people often ask me how we stay ahead and how they should stay ahead. So do you have any tips for them?
Well, I think it's important to not feel overwhelmed by it, and it can feel overwhelming because, as you've just said, Lisa, there's just so much happening all the time, and now we've got an even wider range of platforms to consider. So what I always say to clients is to not try to do too many new things at once. Try a few things that you think will work well for your business. So if you're really good in front of the camera, why not lean into short form video, which is becoming such a big thing and growing on, for instance, LinkedIn now. Maybe try a couple of things at a time, so you're not trying to do too much and trying to change too many different variables at once. And obviously it will also depend on your business, what type of area. So if you're in the life sciences, that might mean something different to a business in another area.
Yeah, thanks, Karen.
I think sort of LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn is not very good at keeping members up to date with changes at all. It's probably the worst platform for that. So they don't really kind of announce things. They don't, you know, they seem to send out emails about 6 months after they've launched something, letting you know that
just find
there's a new feature. And they're quite often testing things. So suddenly a big group of people have access to something and nobody else does. There's mad panic across the platform. And then it all dies down, and actually it was just like them LinkedIn testing things out. So I think be aware of that as well. But I think there's Instagram is much better at kind of updating really regularly about what's coming out, that you kind of feel like you're going along with the journey and you know exactly what's working, what's happening, sort of, you know, there's a little bit of a chance to sort of prepare, rather than it's kind of just launch you, or you just suddenly by chance stumble across something that's been updated or a new feature. But I think following some of the sort of like sort of long-standing kind of experts on platforms is really worth kind of doing that as well. And I think you know, there's, you know, you mentioned earlier on about like Richard van der Blum and there's like John Espirian, people like Michelle Raymond on LinkedIn, all of those that I would kind of like follow for you know, sort of tips and updates with things that are going on, and find, you know, sources that you trust like that. But there's lots of publications as well that do kind of like monthly kind of roundups that can be quite sort of useful as well. So it's used, you know, some of the sort of scheduling tools are really good, like so we talked about like Sprouts Social and Later, Hootsuite, they do sort of regular updates as well. So I think it's good to like just sort of follow that, just to kind of keep in with the general kind of updates.
Yeah, and you've got experts like Matt Navarro. I always follow his updates, and Andy Lambert as well. He does some really brilliant platforms.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Updates. Yeah, no, that's a good suggestion, Jo.
Great. So that was a really interesting panel discussion. Thanks for your input there, Jo and Karen. So now we'll move over to some questions. We've received a few questions from the audience members. So what we'll do is we'll address those today. And if anyone has any other questions that they would like us to answer after you've viewed the recording, then please do send them over to us. So starting off with the first question. So we've been asked what are the opportunities in adopting AI into our marketing. So I think there are opportunities to be had. It sounds like we've been quite negative about it, but I think AI hopefully one day will improve productivity and sort of take away some of those manual tasks that take a bit of time. I think at the moment it's still quite time consuming, but for me, I think it's really good in taking away that kind of blank screen feeling. It gives you ideas, and things like AI sort of note takers are really, really good. I think they sort of cut down on you having to write minutes for meetings. So there are definitely opportunities to be had. What do you think, Jo and Karen?
Well, as we discussed earlier, there's a whole range of possibilities for AI, and that's what really makes it very interesting. And we talked a lot about content and AI, but I think there's also a role for AI in research, and that's somewhere where it can really deliver some time savings. So if I'm writing a social post on a topic I'm not really familiar with, or a blog, I use a tool called Perplexity, which is really good for research, coming up with research ideas and suggesting possible sources. I wouldn't sort of rely on the AI tool completely. I just use it to kickstart some research and help me sort of, as I discussed earlier, get over that whole blank page syndrome where I'm not sure where to go with a topic I might be not so familiar with. So that's, I think, where it can really come into its own.
Yeah. I use it as a sort of starting off point for developing strategies as well.
Yeah, that's a really good use.
Yeah, it just kind of helps you to sort of think about, the audience and stuff like that. But yeah, as we've mentioned, you do need to sort of employ some sort of common sense and knowledge to it as well.
I think you also have to be quite careful because there's a lot of plagiarism with AI. So, if you look at a summary of a topic on AI and you go to the source it quotes, you often find it quotes it word for word. So obviously that's another area you need to be really careful about plagiarism.
Yeah. What do you use it for at the moment, Jo?
Yeah, I think for me, it's that kind of like transitional period, isn't it, at the moment, where people are sort of finding their feet. And I think it's really good to be aware of the limitations and things that you need to kind of watch out, like you said about plagiarism, and just, how you use AI, sort of fact checking, that kind of thing. But I think for me, like for ideas, inspiration, it's really, really useful, really interesting. You've sort of mentioned about, sort of note taking, all of those things that are really sort of helpful and save a lot of time. And I think for sort of businesses sort of going forward, there's some really, great kind of tools that you can use. And, this is like, obviously things are developing sort of really quickly, that are going to really help with things like insights and analytics, to like customer messaging, the sort of generic chatbot that we're kind of used to at the moment will, really sort of develop and become much more sort of, I suppose, ingenious. And, there's lots of things and intuitive. And I think that kind of thing is quite exciting to think for businesses, how that can sort of like feed into your sort of marketing and your sort of customer service and everything else. So I think there's lots to sort of kind of keep an eye on. And it's, I think over 2025, things have already, like over last year, I think back sort of moved very sort of quickly as they are. And it's just, you need to kind of really upskill and get on top of these things now, because I think if you don't and you're resistant to AI, there are ways that it can enhance your business without you completely fully sort of adopting it and forgetting about the sort of human aspect. But it's, ways that I think can really sort of help you going forward, that if you don't start thinking about them kind of now and sort of getting up to speed with things, you're going to get really sort of left behind.
Yeah, I think that's definitely key. Okay, thank you. Can we have the next question, please? Thank you. So what are some of our tips for increasing engagement on LinkedIn? Jo, do you want to start with answering this one?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of people, I think, sort of make the mistake of just thinking that, you know, to get engagement on LinkedIn is all about posting content, and actually it's much more than that. So it's, you know, going back to your strategy and thinking sort of like who are you going, you know, who do you want to connect with, sort of what are your goals, visions, everything else on kind of LinkedIn, and the content part and posting is just part of that. There's got to be, you know, a whole kind of strategy around sort of networking, and sort of communicating and commenting sort of on posts of, you know, people that you could kind of in your arena that you want to connect with, to sort of help sort of position you and your business as somebody who knows what they're talking, as a thought leader in that particular industry, so that people can start to see more about sort of like what you think, your opinions, your insights, and that you're offering sort of value to other sort of members across LinkedIn. And things like the, you know, obviously if you're a team in a company where you've got multiple employees, going back to the employee advocacy part as well, and how that sort of feeds in, because that's, you know, a really, really important aspect of helping your sort of business to sort of boost your like brand awareness, and sort of, you know, boost your sort of reach a little bit further, and sort of giving sort of real helpful sort of interesting insights about your, you know, company and your business, which, you know, people want to, you know, naturally sort of curious, want to find out sort of more about. So it's having a, I think, a proper plan and proper strategy, and sort of working out sort of how the sort of small actions you're taking feed into that, because it's, you know, there's a big kind of puzzle, I guess, you know, to put all those pieces of the jigsaw together to really sort of get genuine and sort of meaningful engagement through LinkedIn.
Yeah, everything always goes back to having a decent strategy in place, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Is there anything you want to add, Karen?
Yeah, I completely agree with Jo there. I think it's very important that you don't just see LinkedIn as a one-way sort of process where you'll see a lot of companies particularly pushing out content on LinkedIn but not doing an awful lot of engaging, and it's a network. So I sort of always say to clients, treat it as a conversation rather than just a speech. So that's very important. Completely agree there. I also feel that tone of voice comes into this a lot on LinkedIn. So going back to what Jo was saying earlier about authenticity, I think using an authentic voice and not sounding stuffy and corporate is just so important on LinkedIn now. It makes such a difference to engagement. You know, talk as you would talk when you're having a conversation with somebody. Don't treat it like a press release or a speech. You know, use an informal tone. I mean, you know, I wouldn't recommend swearing and that kind of thing, although that does suit some people, perhaps, depending on your audience. I'd be quite careful about that. But certainly talk in a conversational way. Talk about your challenges and your, you know, things that haven't gone well, because people want to relate to you on a human level. It's not robot to robot, it's human to human. So I think that's very important. But also looking at the type of content that you're putting out there on LinkedIn. So not just sticking to one thing, not just sticking to text and an image, but trying video, looking at different techniques. I think really kind of leaning into those different formats on LinkedIn, looking at polls, looking at all different ways. And I think it kind of really helps to keep your audience engaged on LinkedIn if you can kind of mix it up a bit.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, thank you. Can we have the next question, please? So the question is, do you think social media marketing is important for life science companies? I'll start answering it. I get asked this question quite a lot, actually. And I think, yes, it definitely is. So we work with quite a lot of early stage biotechs. And for them, having a good social media presence can really help to get funding opportunities. It really embeds the fact that it's a proper business with a proper, you know, service or product offering. And it just widens the network. It makes attendance at conferences easier. It enables them to share their research and their findings really well as well. So yes, I think it is important. I think it's really important to have a strategy in place, and that ensures you're not just kind of posting randomly on social media for posting's sake. It helps to give some direction, and it helps you to be strategic. So that's my thoughts on why I think it's important. Jo, Karen, do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it comes back to are your audience members there?
Yeah.
And for the vast majority of life science companies, your audience will be there on LinkedIn. So if they're there, you need to be there, showing up regularly and consistently. And yeah, I think it's super important now. How many companies aren't on LinkedIn? How many professionals in the life sciences sector aren't on LinkedIn? I'll say it was relatively few. And for many of those companies, it will be a key social media platform. Particularly now we're seeing the demise of X. It's becoming less important for businesses.
Yeah.
I think we've seen a huge exodus from there. And sort of reprioritization around LinkedIn. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it depends what obviously like the purpose is and what the goals are. You know, for networking purposes, obviously LinkedIn is brilliant for sort of life sciences, but it's interesting we sort of touched on it kind of briefly earlier, where we were looking at sort of TikTok and you know, certain companies using it to attract like graduates and you know, sort of really kind of showcase a bit more about sort of what goes on behind the scenes and what a career is like sort of working at their company. So they're using it in different ways to inspire sort of younger generation as well. So again, it's like if you're not thinking about social media now, then you're going to just be falling behind your competitors, because the people who, you know, companies that are adopting it and getting ahead now are going to be sort of that much further ahead. And for brand awareness and sort of reputation, all of those things, it's really important. It's become like really, really key, I think, for every business, not just life sciences, but it you know, it's everywhere. And it's, you know, it's, yeah, if you're not getting sort of involved in some way and putting, you know, your focus into social media now, you're going to be sort of losing opportunities, I think, in the future.
Yeah, exactly. I think it just embeds you as a proper business, doesn't it, really? To that professional angle. Okay, well, I think we're probably out of time now for questions. So that's the end of the broadcast. Thanks for joining. If you have any questions or you would like to reach out, you can contact us via email at hello@socialelements.co.uk. You can visit our website, socialelements.co.uk, or you can visit our LinkedIn page, which is Social Elements Media. The next LinkedIn Live will be on the 26th of February at noon. The title is Maximising SEO Strategies for the Life Science Industry, and that will be delivered by one of our partner companies, Artia Creative. So I think that's going to be a really interesting discussion. It'd be great if you can join us. So that's it from us. I'd like to thank Jo and Karen for giving up their time and helping to present on this really important topic. Looking forward to seeing you on 26th of February. Thanks.